Welcome to the Running for Real podcast, where each week we bring you a conversation designed to help you create positive change in your life, community, and planet. It's a collective of conversations about running, the climate emergency, and social justice. Running for Real is for the brave, for those with courage and vulnerability. United by our love of running, we're driving momentum towards some of the really tough challenges we're facing as humanity. So come join me, Tina Muir, and let's get started. Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 257 of the Running for Real podcast. Thank you for joining me today. I'm excited you are here. This is a really, really special one, and I'm glad you get to be a part of it. I'm glad, to be honest, I managed to figure out the technical end of recording a podcast without anyone, any technical podcast audio people around. It was a little bit stressful, I have to admit, but also we managed it, Maria and I. I was fortunate that Maria was able to come with me on this trip that you're going to probably be hearing quite a lot about, or already have been over the last few weeks. And today I'm excited to bring the first of two episodes recorded live in New York. This one was recorded in Beacon, New York, with the one and only Mary Cain. And you know by now, or most of you I would say know about Mary Cain. I mean, her name was definitely known across not just the running world, across the fitness world, but across the entire world, with her op-ed in the New York Times, speaking out about the emotional abuse that she suffered at the Nike Oregon project. It was that New York Times op-ed that was called, I was the fastest girl in America until I joined Nike. And that gives you a bit of an insight. If you don't know, you should definitely go check her out. There's also a Rich Roll podcast that goes deep into her story. I would encourage that. But today, as with always, we like to go beyond the regular questions, and that is what we have done. Today is a lot about the future of running, what we can do as individuals, and her new group, or her new organization, Atalanta. And this was a really intimate conversation. Mary is an open book, and I absolutely loved every second of it, and I think you will too. So we are going to take a minute to thank Tracksmith, and we'll be right to that episode with Mary. Thank you to Tracksmith for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. Now, I want to take this ad a little bit different today and just talk a little bit more about the experience. So this interview with Mary was in Beacon, New York, where Tracksmith had an outpost, is what they are calling it, like a pop-up shop that they are here for the summer in this tiny little adorable camp place in Beacon, New York. And by the way, so falling in love with it, figuring out a way to get us all there sometime in the future. Or maybe not all of us, but a good chunk, right? And Tracksmith has this pop-up. And this interview, this entire situation just represents what Tracksmith is all about. When I was running up the hill, we went up Mount Beacon, which was a 1,400 mountain hill thing that we went up while we were there. And most people who were doing this, including myself, didn't really know what we were getting ourselves into. And I could really see a lot of struggle on people's faces, but it was amazing to see them at the top. But the thing is, as we were going up, a group of us were talking about Tracksmith, and one of the people there said, "I'm a fan of the brand." And you don't hear that very often, do you? You don't say, "I'm a fan of Whirlpool dishwashers or washing machines." You don't say, "I'm a fan of Coca-Cola or Delta Airlines." They're just there, right? But Tracksmith has this whole, almost like a tribe, where they just want to build community. And this whole event, this whole day that Maria and I were fortunate to be a part of, was all about community. It was all for just giving back and just being supportive and welcoming and inclusive of the community. And it was such a wonderful day. And that really represents what Tracksmith does. We also heard about the Olympic trials. They had 5 Olympic trials qualifiers. And for those people, they were telling us that they had masseuse, they had chiropractors, they had all kinds of things for those athletes in this one location for them to be able to perform at their best. And that's just the way that Tracksmith is able to think about things, even if not having the big budgets that one of the huge brands have. So they're just creative and finding ways that they can make the community better. And in addition to that, getting your hands on the clothes. I mean, even someone who has quite a few things, getting in that store and seeing these clothes, I mean, it was hard not to spend my entire livelihood on buying new clothes because they're just such good quality. So be sure to go check out Tracksmith. You can look at their journal, you can look at the things they are up to, who they are supporting currently, their new styles, by going to tracksmith.com, and you can use code TINA15 to get yourself $15 off your first order. I want to make one small adjustment in that it is the speed session shorts that I love. I've been saying the session shorts, and actually now I got to see it wasn't the shorts I was talking about. They are the speed session shorts. They are my favorite, and you can go check them out at tracksmith.com and use code TINA15 for $15 off your order of $75 or more. Before we begin, I'm going to really put Mary on the spot here and just say, I mean, most people here, if not everyone, knows, what Mary has done so far. And I'm sure we're all excited for 10 years from now to see what she's done. But on behalf of someone who had a terrible relationship with food, had a terrible relationship with my body, and you have been one of the biggest game changers in our sport in every sense of the word, but primarily for women, for young girls. Can we all just say thank you to Mary? And I want to say it on behalf of all the women here and the men and all the people, all the girls and women in our sport across the world. So can we just give Mary a big thank you and clap for all that she has done?
Thank you.
I'm sorry to put you on the spot there.
It's a good thing I'm wearing sunglasses right now. I'm kind of tearing up, so thank you.
No, and I mean, I think I really wanted to start with that because it is something that we're going to, mostly today, we are going to go beyond the things that you would have heard Mary talk about. For anyone who has listened to my show, I really, I bring Des Linden on and I don't ask her a single question about winning Boston. I really don't like to go into the same old things. And so today I thought it would be important to focus on girls and women of the future, but also for the guys, this is where you will come in too of what you can do to be a part of this. But Mary, before we get to that, I have a question of, we said about making the trek. But we all noticed that you arrived 10 minutes after we left. So was that intentional?
Yeah. Let's just say that I wasn't fully prepared to go and be as hardcore of runners as you guys were today. And I think my 5-mile jaunt on the flats of Beacon had a slightly different intensity to it than all of you badass runners who hiked, what was that, 1,500 feet or something? I mean, just looking past here right now, I saw the top and I was like, oh, I think they're a little bit more athletic than I am.
And that in itself, can I just say, for many of you as we were going up that hike, I mean, you might look at someone like Mary or some other professional athlete and think, wow, look at how strong they are. They can do anything. But even right there, as much as she's kind of somewhat joking, there's still that element of, self-doubt and I don't know if I can do things and that's tough. And so I really want to bring out the humanness element of things. And when you and I were talking a little while ago just now, we were talking about running being for you have a full-time job here at Tracksmith. You have a job at New York Road Runners, and it just announced this week. So we're really getting the scoop that Mary is the CEO of Atalanta. So, as you are probably going to be much better at giving an elevator pitch of what Atalanta is, let's start with that, and then I'll go on to what I was going to ask.
Yeah, absolutely. So this week I've announced the project that I've been working on for the last 9 months. And no, it was not making a baby, but I guess this is my form of a baby at 25, which is I've launched a women's professional running team that is going to be the first of its kind, in that we are an actual service-based nonprofit. So we're going to be based in New York City, and we're going to be doing community service work within the broader New York City area, in which we're going to be serving as mentors to younger female girls really kind of in the boroughs. And I'm so excited to be bringing on a team of professional women to help work with me to grow this and to also make the sport a better place for everybody.
And that, again, right there speaks to the fact that not only did Mary expose things and speak out about things that were going on that were terrifying and, had in some ways broken her and, managed to bring herself back, get back to a healthy place. But as I've heard you say on, maybe it was Rich Roll's podcast, which shouldn't be advertising other shows, but I definitely recommend checking that out. Talking about, I think it was there, like opening the door for women, and you said you're going to stand there till you die.
100%.
And that's, again, shows your strength. But you and I talked earlier about there's a lot of running groups, running clubs in the country, but there are so few run by women, if any, at least at the professional level. So tell us about that end of the motivation and why that is meaningful to you, beyond what else you're doing with it.
Yeah, I think first off, it's incredibly important just throughout all of sports, not just track and field, but really every single sport in the United States and internationally should have more of a female presence. And I think especially in a sport like track and field where, all things considered, we're pretty equitable in that if you're going to a professional race, you're going to have a men's and women's field, prize money is going to be similar, hypothetically pays similar, although we don't actually know that since everybody is signing NDAs. And when it comes to how much anybody's being paid, that's not usually public information. And so when you look at a sport like that, you kind of assume, okay, it's, as things go, probably pretty equitable. But once you start getting kind of behind the scenes and you start opening the doors and kind of getting off the track and seeing who are the people who are actually organizing sport, and you realize that they all look the same. The majority, by like an insane amount of people who are in the sports marketing departments of your major shoe sponsors are white men. And the truth is that's not what the sport looks like broadly. If you're getting to a marathon start line, there is a diversity problem right now in our sport, and that's something that we always have to be talking about and how to change that. But at the very least, when it comes to gender discrepancies, we really are pretty 50-50, and I believe that that's what the boardrooms and back rooms of the sport should be looking like. And so if I'm one of the first to really start a professional women's team, I hope I'm making a difference by doing that.
Yeah. And I think if we've seen anything from just the way you've lived your life, the way you've bounced back from things, the others better watch out because you're coming and going to be coming in hot there. And it's exciting to see. And with regards to the running groups and bringing in other women, strong women to be role models for the future girls of tomorrow. How important is that part to you? I mean, you being this phenom kid, were coming up in the ranks, you were kind of people talking about you like surefire Olympian, this is our future. And with the next generation of runners, and everyone here will have a daughter, a niece, a family friend, some little girl in their life who could well end up as a runner and could well show promise as a runner. So firstly, talk about Atalanta's end of this, of how important that end of it is that you said about mentorship. And then we can go into, what culturally the differences are here.
Yeah. So what our programming is really going to be is that we're planning on having seasonal in-person workshops within New York City in which our professional athletes are going to be going in and actively mentoring younger girls. They don't exclusively have to be runners. If anything, if they're not in sport, we would love to introduce them to sport in a healthy fashion. And what our programming is really meant to do is two things, which is one, keep girls in sport. If you look at the statistics nationwide, the dropout rate for younger women is much higher than men. And I see one of the reasons for that is the fact that if we probably took a poll of this beautiful lawn we're in right now. And I said, how many of you actively follow women's sports? You know, even the ladies in the room might not be really shooting their hands up. I mean, I know I was guilty of that in some ways outside of the Olympic years during most of my younger years. But if I said, how many of you follow a football team or a baseball team or any of the major national sports, we'd probably all have our hands up in some capacity. And so the problem with that is you're having all of these young women look at sport and not see themselves. Look at sport and say, is this really something that I have a long-term opportunity in? So if we're sending women into the community who can say, hey, I do this for a living. I'm a professional. I'm somebody who you're going to see on the TV competing at US champs, world champs, Olympic games, then you're all of a sudden going to have an opportunity for a young girl to really see herself having a future in sport. And that's not to say that we're trying to recruit girls who plan on having aspirations to train professionally. But if you fall in love with sport, if you kind of get that opportunity to be a part of it at a younger age, your opportunity to really kind of buy into the system and still have longevity, whether or not you're ever going to be paid for it in the long run, is something that's incredibly powerful. And then the second real goal is to not just get girls in sport to do sport, but also help them develop a healthy relationship with it. As many of us know, this kind of general sporting world that we're in is kind of in the middle of a reckoning with the fact that the cultures in which we've established are generally pretty toxic. It's this win at all cost, do what you have to do, crush somebody to win mentalities that truthfully, a lot of people who are runners and a lot of people who are in sport don't really feel that aligns with their general ethics and ethos. And to, at a young age, be encouraging girls to see that you can be competitive, you can have drive, you can have dreams, you can have goals, but you can do it in a way where you have balance in your life, where it's adding positivity to you as a person outside of your own running and career goals. I think that's incredibly powerful. And so I'm excited to really be working on the programming now over the next few months, in which we're going to be planning on incorporating a lot of the tools to success that you kind of ultimately learn if you're lucky as an athlete, like all those kind of like mental tools, whether it's positivity, mantras, breathing routines to handle nerves, but that typically aren't taught in a true structural way to benefit younger people.
Yes, so much of that I think most of us will understand or have thought about, or maybe not thought about, and maybe this is opening up your eyes and making you think about things in a way that is different. And you mentioned there it's kind of essentially embedded in the DNA of our sport. This win at all costs. I mean, even before we go deeper, maybe let's just talk about everyone here today. I mean, I think we've all been guilty of taking a race that's a really important race, whether you want a Boston qualifier or you want to run a 5K under 25 minutes or whatever it may be, and almost taking whatever sacrifices, I don't care what happens to my body, just get me what I want, mentality, that short-term approach. And you obviously understood that very well. How do we flip the script on that? Like like you said, so embedded, and we're so short-term, and particularly, as you know, within like the high school and college level, I mean, there's so many girls out there, and we can talk about the coaching end of it in a minute, but there's so many girls out there, and, I'm sure I did it. I'm sure most college and high school athletes have done it where, I don't care if my body's going to break down in 2 years and I won't be able to run for a year, but I want to live on this success here. And as someone who came up as that, just that person that everyone had their eyes on, how do you see us changing that?
Yeah, I think there's always a two-step approach to change in general, which is talking the talk or advocacy, which is having people such as ourselves sit here today and say that that's not the right way. And I think always having somebody who's willing to put themselves out there to stand up and say there are other ways is always going to be the biggest hurdle. And I think until somebody says it, you can't really move forward. And now that I feel I'm kind of past that stage, or not really, because I think there's always ability to gain more awareness. The next step is walking the walk, which is to me education. And so as important as it is to talk about this and to even be doing something like a podcast and kind of spreading the word, the next step for me is actively going into communities and educating people on how to think differently. And I think how now that I'm older, have realized that the ultimate pitfalls for a lot of young people, and this does not just apply to sports. This is something that's been studied a lot within the psychological community, because it's something that we take into our careers. It's something that we take into our personal life. But young people who have outcome-based models of success versus growth-based models for success do have more struggles when it comes to their mental health, because they're always just acting for an outcome versus trying to take little steps to continue to blossom as an individual. And so the ways that you really can convert somebody into more of a growth-based model for success versus outcome is a lot of how you're talking to people. And the younger you are, the easier that you can just prevent yourself from ever going down the psychological pitfalls that make you very outcome-oriented. But it's simple things, right? So if you have a younger kid and they come home from class and they got a 90 on a test, right? If you go, wow, oh my God, that was incredible. You got a 90? Wow, that's an A. Okay, wow, good job. They're going to think, okay, A equals success. If they come home and they have a 90 and you go, wow, I really saw you studying for this one, and that was incredible. I know you put in a lot of time and effort in your room, and I'm just really proud of you for really doing that work to be proud of yourself. And no matter what the outcome was, I know you worked really hard and I'm proud of you. That all of a sudden for that younger person is going to have them think about what was important in that conversation differently. So the kid whose parents celebrated the grade are going to think the outcome is important. The kid whose parents celebrated what they did to get the grade is going to think the studying was important. And so to me, that very general kind of attitude of what I'm trying to teach younger people, or to have this growth mindset, is what's going to build a lot of the programming and a lot of the educational work that I hope to do, which is mostly give them tools so that they feel that they're developing this growth mindset. And I'm going to be totally honest and take a pause to say that I am incredibly unhealthy level outcome oriented myself. Okay. That's a part of the reason that I really fell into a lot of the pitfalls that I did as a younger professional athlete. And it's because societally, most of us are very outcome oriented. You're not trying to, most of us, at least in a sport like running, where there's such a numerical kind of guidance for success, just automatically break into a growth mindset unless we're really actively repositioning ourselves and trying to find ways to kind of create this. And so part of the reason that I'm kind of maybe, having this little moment of self-awareness is to say that I have been really leaning on a lot of other people, not only in my own personal life, but also through this programming, to make sure that I'm not leaning into my own automatic mental biases of how to define success while building programming. And so I think even on this kind of educational side of things, as much as it is important to kind of teach this to younger people, it's also incredibly, if not sometimes more so important, to first put in the work to teach yourself. And this is true with a lot of the different issues that we're talking about, right? Like, I still have some body insecurities. And so I'm very self-conscious of the fact that if I'm going to be giving a younger person advice, I should always have a professional with me, and I should always be taught beforehand the proper language to be portraying so that I don't accidentally infuse anything I'm teaching somebody with my own bias towards myself. And so just something that I think is important to note because we're all going to have our own kind of ingrained systems. And the more we're aware that we have them, sometimes the harder it is to properly teach somebody to avoid the same thing unless we're trying to actively teach ourselves.
Okay, so I'm going to play devil's advocate here because as much as I'm absolutely trying to do the same thing you are, and I feel like I've been moving along that path, for people maybe watching here or listening who say, yeah, but how am I going to be driven? How am I going to go get my goals if I don't have this on the agenda and I want to get this time? When I'm in my workouts, then what stops me from backing off or walking or quitting?
You are way less likely to quit if you have a growth mindset than an outcome mindset. I mean, way less likely to quit. And I'll give you an example of this. If you're mid-marathon and your goal is a BQ, and mid-race you suddenly realize, I'm not going to BQ today, but you're still on track to PR, aren't you more likely going to give up because your goal is suddenly taken away from you? Versus if you go into the race and your plan is, I'm really going to settle for the first 10K. The next 10 miles is when I'm really going to start feeling that burn, but I'm saving it until the end to really push. And my plan is to commit that last 400 meters, finish as strong as I possibly can. And that's your race plan. Well, if midway you realize I'm not on BQ pace, you're not going to give up because your goal is something that is always going to be doable no matter what the outcome is. And I think that's why mid-workout, I've been trying to retrain myself. And let's get real. I totally have my days where I don't succeed at this, but the truth is practice makes progress, not perfect. And so what I try to do now is when I go into workouts, yes, I have my time goals. Yes, I have my splits, but I always come in with something else that is going to determine my workout and how I review it. And so sometimes it might be form based. I might be like, I'm going to try to run this workout and make sure that I never break down physically. And so I will always make sure to stay at that like 80% effort during this tempo or whatever. And then even if the times aren't what they should be, I'm able to say, no, I'm rocking what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm owning this workout and the outcome isn't a part of it.
Well, firstly, does anyone else want to sign up for the inevitable book that Mary will write someday about like this Zen Buddhist approach to running combined with the growth mindset and grit? Is it already on the way? So if so, I would like to buy a copy because I'm probably getting you in something. So let's just move on here. And secondly, I quite often talk within the Running for Real community about the same thing with paces. That, so often we are just obsessed with our pace, but you can't win because if you look down and it says you're running faster than you should be, you panic because you're like, I'm going to blow up. And as soon as you feel even a little bit bad, you're like, here we go. Like it's done. My race is done or my workout's done. When in fact you could have maybe kept going at that pace and be fitter than you think. Or if it goes the other way and it says you're slow, you're like, what is wrong with me? Why am I so slow? Why is it's all gone? And then you panic the other way. Like there's no winning. So, but for a lot of people, maybe a lot of people here, a lot of people listening, this is so alien. And especially someone new joining the sport, what do they see runners talking about is Garmin's and GPS and paces and splits and times and BQs, and it's all numbers oriented. So it's one thing hearing us talking about this, but then it's a totally other thing to be running in a say, I'm going to not look at my watch and say, well, how do I know if this is the right pace? I feel like this could be the wrong pace, but maybe it's not, and overthink things that way.
100%. So I think first off, I will acknowledge my boyfriend's in the crowd and he knows more so than anybody else. I do not always walk the walk with this. I need help. Right? And so if you're sitting here saying, this is great, I believe you, but how do I do it? Like Tina said, ask for help is the biggest answer. And for me, that often means running with other people. That might mean if I'm doing a workout, maybe I'm asking my pacer and I'm going to say, hey, I'm not going to check my watch during this workout because I know today is one of those days where I really care about these times. So I'm going to trust you. We're going to have a great workout and I'm never going to look at my watch. And I commit to that. Maybe if I know I'm going to look at my watch, I take the watch off and I run with my friend. And I say, hey, I'm running by feel today. And this is just going to be one of those days where I'm not going to check. And I think that's why being able to have a supportive group, and in particular one in which maybe you do have a friend who's a little farther along in this process than you, it's really a really valuable thing to be able to lean on others. And if you're listening to this at home and you're like, I don't really have a ton of running buddies, I don't really necessarily have somebody to reach out to. Well, one, maybe this is the opportunity for you to start thinking, hey, how do I join a local team? How do I get involved with a community? But another thing is there are a lot of virtual communities right now that you can start to create to lean on other people so you don't feel like you're going through this process alone. And sometimes it can be as simple as I'm really great friends with Alexi Pappas. She's one of my best friends, not only in running, but in life. And if I know I'm in particular just like, I hadn't been in a good groove this week, I've been way too obsessed with the numbers game, I'll just reach out to her and have a chat. And by the end of it, I'll be inspired and think I can take over the world for a lot of reasons. But, also just in something like this, I'll remember, hey, it's okay that I'm not perfect every day. It's okay that I sometimes slip and fall back into these mindsets. But as long as I'm actively always trying, I'm going to get a little bit better every day. And so that's why my 10-year-old self was probably much less than my 25-year-old self. And I hope my 40-year-old self is even more zen. And then by the time I'm 80, you guys are going to be taking yoga with me.
Thank you to Beam for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. I am so excited to be working alongside of Beam, thankful for their support and really enjoying getting to appreciate and enjoy these products. Now we are in the summer months and we are sweating a lot and I need electrolytes and I'm sure you do too, post-run, pre-run. And it's just helpful to get our water in to make sure we do stay hydrated, especially as 75% of Americans are chronically dehydrated. And we know water is essential, but water alone won't always do the trick. That's why Beam created these electrolyte powders that deliver effective and fast hydration, thanks to their supercharged and super hydrating ingredients like coconut water, Himalayan sea salt. And there are 3 flavors for you to check out, which I have been talking about a little bit in each. If you get a variety pack, you'll have the chance to experience all the benefits of their 3 unique electrolyte powders. Balance has this potent blend of prebiotics and probiotics to support a healthy digestion and immune function. The energy version will have green coffee bean extract, which will deliver you an energizing boost, and compounds like beetroot and vitamin B will help your body convert dietary energy into physical energy. I've also been using that in my races and loving it. And last but not least, the recovery restores collagen, while branch chain amino acids support tired muscles and help your body fight fatigue. I definitely have that recover multiple times after my run. I look forward to it as I'm getting close to home. And it's definitely a great way to make sure you are getting those important ingredients that are mindfully sourced. They really think about that. They have no added sugars, no artificial sweeteners, no GMOs. It's really a great product to go check out. Now you can go to Beam TLC, that's BEAMTLC.com, and you will be able to check out their Beam Elevate series, which is what I've been talking about. They also have some CBD products, which I am currently testing out. And so we will be reporting back on that in the future. But you know me, I will be honest, we will see. And you can get yourself 15% off if you use code TINA at checkout at beamtlc.com. That's code TINA to get yourself 15% off, or 20% off if you sign yourself up for a subscription. So go check it out. And thank you again to Beam for sponsoring this podcast.
By the time I'm 80, you guys are going to be taking yoga with me.
I wouldn't say 80. I'd say more like, that would probably be like 35, I would imagine. And then beyond that, another thing that we can all relate to here, you being at the level you were, and then, you've had a lot of injuries, which, correlates to the damage that your body went through during all those years and, repairing from that. And again, we talked about earlier about high school, college girls, that mentality of like, I don't care if my bones break when I'm 25. Like, I just want to be NCAA champion or whatever. We've all had the experience of being like at what we consider our peak or our fastest, and then coming back into the sport, be it after injury, be it after having children, be it after something. And, we can say about not looking at the watch, but what other things do you struggle with in that, you're in a totally different place to where you were 5-10 years ago? How do you mentally deal with just not looking back all the time and not seeing you doing a workout and being like, oh my God, I used to do that like 2 minutes faster kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I used to really struggle with that. I think especially before I came out with my New York Times piece, I was bluntly in a very different place than I am now. I think emotionally, every workout was a comparison to the best workout I had ever done, which first off is also so unrealistic. Why wasn't I looking at the average one? Because that would have been a very different standard to be targeting. But I think in life, we tend to kind of romanticize the past and even things that we did really well. You don't remember the stomach ache that you had the night before. You don't necessarily remember the fact that your foot was a little bit sore going into that workout, but you were able to stretch it out. And so I think, sometimes time is also what really helps. And I think there's a reason that a lot of older athletes are the most consistent and the ones who you just know, yes, they're 35, 36, 37. And, historically we would say they're past their prime, but the reason they kind of just go into races and run exactly the same race they've been running forever is because you kind of learn how to shake things off a little bit better. And so I think the younger you are, the more everything feels like this is the end of the world. And I'm only 25, so I don't want to insinuate that I'm old by any means. But I've been a pro for 8 years now. And I think that's enough time for me to also start to realize, okay, I think I've been around the block a little bit. I think if my Garmin's telling me I'm running 9:30 pace, well, maybe that's because it hasn't hooked up to the GPS and I don't need to panic. If I'm mid-workout and I'm suddenly like, I'm falling off these paces, I realize it's better to get it done and for me to feel really proud afterwards that I pushed through than me to, quit mid-workout and then be sad afterwards because maybe I coulda, shoulda, would've. And so I think if you're younger and you haven't had the experience of time, this is again when you lean on other people and maybe talk to your older teammates or maybe reach out to the older runners in your running group that you're a part of. And I think this is also another situation where pros can really step up in that, it's hard in the professional world to always be really honest about how you're doing, because there's money on the line. And if you're supposed to run a race and you're kind of hobbling through and you don't even want to admit to yourself that you're injured, it can be kind of challenging to be honest and share that publicly and kind of remind other people that that's okay. But yeah, I think the more we kind of as a society remind people that we're not perfect, the better.
Yeah, thank you. And I think, there's so many more areas that we could expand on that with just the way that we're looking at things, the approach that we have towards our sport. And I'd like to go back in for a little bit on the younger element of things with the people coming up. Now, one thing I have been curious about is like if we're going to change the mindset, change the approach, change the way we view running, it needs to start at the younger age group, because that's going to be where people come through. That's also going to be new people joining the sport. They're going to be the maybe not so much experts, but when you were 18, if someone new joined the sport, who were they going to look to? Oh, well, this is what she's doing. But then we've got a lot of coaches in the high school and collegiate system who have been in there for 25 years, who don't intend on retiring for another 20 years. They're not going to go to a talk at the TFCCCA or whatever the convention is, they're not going to go to a nutrition talk because I know everything. They're not going to go to a talk on, how to bring up women athletes or girl athletes. How do we change that without accessing how do we get to that point?
Yeah. And I think that's something that's really difficult because, of course you always hope that everybody kind of realizes that it's okay to constantly be educating yourself. It's okay to be growing. And I think there's a stubbornness in sport, especially, but in society at large, which I feel like has been like my go-to phrase during this conversation, which is that there's there very much is this feeling that if I have to keep learning, then somebody's kind of questioning my expertise right now. And I think right off the bat, that should not be the case. If you are a doctor, my dad is in his 50s and has been a doctor now for 25 years, you always have to be learning new things. That's just a part of the job because technology is constantly changing. If you got your degree in the 90s for computer science, you'd be out of a job right now if you never were continuing to learn about the new technology. And I think we should be teaching sport in the same exact way. It's okay for things to change with time. We're all learning, we're all growing, and our society is changing with time. And that's a really beautiful and a really positive thing. And growth should never be treated as this really like dangerous, maybe they don't, take me seriously, kind of combative relationship that I think a lot of people in the sports world have. But in the situations in which, that person is being stubborn and they don't care, this is why we have to educate our kids. This is why we have to educate the parents. This is why we have to educate the people who are maybe making the decisions within that local school district. And it's because the more people are empowered to protect themselves, the better they're going to be when they face a difficult situation. And of course, I always would rather just get rid of all the bad guys than make somebody have to do extra work themselves to protect themselves. Like, I will say that right now. I sometimes hate it when we make it so that potential victims have to do all of the work versus getting rid of the people who are a problem. But the unfortunate truth is we can't get rid of every bad guy. And the more we're preparing ourselves, our kids, the next generation, the less likely that person is going to have a really negative impact, or at least to the scale that they would if people weren't prepared. And so that's why I'm hoping, even with my organization, to have an incredibly wide reach and to ultimately really be helping educate as many parents, teachers, kids as possible, so that if they are faced with a problem, they know to say no, and they know to get out of that, and they know they can ask for help.
And so what would you tell the people sitting out here in front of us, the people listening to this, about their role, saying, I'm not a teacher, I have no role in this, this is not really my battle to take on?
I've had a lot of people say that to me over the last year, and I'm like, well, get out of the sport. If you don't care about making things better for everybody, then why are you here? And if you want to never come to a race, and if you never want to come and be involved in a group run, and if you never want to experience, I think, all of the beauty that comes with community in our sport, then I think, okay, it doesn't affect you. But if you care even an ounce about any of those community moments, I think it's only right for you to educate yourself as much as you can, because you never know when somebody who's your teammate, when somebody who's your friend, when somebody who's a part of a race experience with you is going to all of a sudden have a really negative experience because of something you did or said. And I think that's part of the thing, is that, we don't live in a bubble within this sport. And although it can feel like a very small world, there's so many people with so many different backgrounds who get into running. And I think that's one of the things that make our sport a really beautiful and incredible place. And so the more that you're really kind of preparing yourself to be a part of that community and adding value to it, I think the better and the happier and the faster we're all going to be, versus almost being hyper focused on the fact like, well, I don't have a kid, it doesn't really matter. Because you don't want to be the curmudgeonly person 20, 30, 40 years from now who never kind of bothered to learn about a lot of these issues, so that you're the odd person out and suddenly don't feel attached to this community.
Yeah, and I think even beyond that, I mean, we all know within my team at Running for All, we've been talking a lot about just being a mentor for other runners, be it new runners, be it inexperienced runners. But then we may not see ourselves as experts, or you may not see yourself as an expert as a runner. You may not, say, well, I don't have the credentials of these two, so like I don't count as an expert. But to someone, we can all remember what it was like being a brand new runner, when you were proud to be able to run a mile, or you were you ran a time that you never thought you could, or a distance, or up this Mount Beacon today. Like, maybe I saw quite a lot of faces halfway up that were like, oh, what have I got myself into? Like, I don't know if, are we nearly there? And we were not even at the first stoppage point. And yet we did it. And how good that feels when someone is there who doesn't have to be experienced in terms of run fast or run 150 marathons, but just knows a little bit, even if it's just a little bit of something that you can pass along. So yeah, what can you take in the runners that you see? Maybe it's someone who lives in your neighborhood who you see has just started running, and you see them come back and they're struggling, and just say, if you have any questions, I'm happy to help you. So, I think you're right that we all have a role to play. And then with the other element of what we were talking about with, you saying about, taking away from paces, taking away from that, I'd love to talk about the toughness thing here. You and I both would have come from a world that was like, I got to push so hard that I fall over and lie on the ground when I finish every single workout. And my recovery paces have got to be faster than this, so that I am the fastest I can be. And it's all about grit and tough and how do we switch out of that? And without, runners need toughness. What we do is hard, but how do we switch out of that? Give ourselves compassion, but hold those two things at the same time. Know that you can push through, but also that it's okay if you do say to yourself, rather than you will keep finishing this, to be come on, you can do this. You're doing great. Keep it up.
Yeah. So one thing that I'll share that my therapist had said to me, and by the way, therapy is awesome. I talk to a therapist once a week. I think if I didn't, I wouldn't be sitting here right now giving all of her wise wisdom back to you guys. And so one just I think really great example that she had given to me is, if you tense your arm and your hand and your face and you just hold that, see how long you can last in that position. And the truth is, it's not going to be very long. For people who are in person right now, they can see my hand is shaking because I'm trying to hold as tightly as I possibly can to this fist. And when we did this during the call, I think I lasted 3 minutes because I was super competitive and wanted to see how far I can get with this. But afterwards, my arm was exhausted because I was holding so tightly for just 3 minutes. Now, if you think about the event that I run, which is a 1500, I still have another best case scenario minute to go before I'm done with that race. So if for that first 3 minutes, I was wasting that much energy holding the equivalent mental stress, which, by the way, does affect your physical body. If you're mentally stressed, the odds that your jaw is suddenly tight, the odds that you're clenching your fists are rapidly going to rise. And so if you kind of realize, okay, even if I really, really want to be the tough, gritty, doing weird things with my teeth right now person, you can't do that for very long. And so that's actually going to hurt your running, because by the time it matters at the end, you're going to be exhausted. So if you kind of realize, okay, for the benefit of my running, to be a better runner, I actually kind of have to relax for the majority of my training and save that incredibly tense hold for the end, or when I'm really going to need to tap into that extra energy, you're going to realize that this whole grit, grind, force it out mentality is actually something that's going to make you a worse runner. And so for at the very minimum, your running career, know that the more you're holding tight, the more likely you're going to break, the more likely you're going to bonk early, and the more likely you're going to burn out. And so hold that hand a little looser, pretend that there's an egg in your hand for the majority of the race, and once it's 400 meters to go, throw that egg down, clench that fist, and let's go.
Thank you to Picky Bars for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. Picky Bars, this was the brand I was so excited to be working alongside. It was like a dream company to be working alongside. And then they reached out and I just could barely believe it. I am a member of their famous Picky Club, which you have probably heard about them talking about, where every month you get a delivery of whatever products you like. You get an allotment, or you can pick which level you want, and then you fill up your allotment with products. You get massive discounts, up to 30% off the regular price of the items, in addition to the extra 20% off that you will get from the code I'm going to give you in just a minute. So that is massive savings for you as a Running for Real listener. And they also will have you be able to get the listener hookup that is special for you as a Running for Real listener, which is getting 20% off $25 or more. You can get my favorites, which include the peanut butter and jelly granola, the drizzle, and I love the chai and catch me bars, but all of the bars are really good. I really haven't found one that I don't like. You can shop the bestsellers, you can stock up on your favorites, but you can get 20% off your order of $25 or more. You can also get 20% off the Picky Club, in addition to the up to 30% you will save from signing up. As I said, I pay for the Picky Club myself. I love it. And also check out the pancakes. My kids love those. I love those. They're really easy and just taste delicious. So you can go to pickybars.com/Tina. That's PICKY.com/Tina. And that will get you 20% off your order. And go check it out. It is a wonderful company. They're doing so much for supporting mothers, for supporting all kinds of groups that are trying to make a change in this world. They're trying to make the world a better place. It really is a wonderful company to support. And in addition to that, their products are absolutely fantastic and a lot of personality thrown in. The website is just fun, and there's a lot of personality in the brand. So go check it out at pickybars.com/Tina.
For at the very minimum, your running career, know that the more you're holding tight, the more likely you're going to break, the more likely you're going to bonk early, and the more likely you're going to burn out. And so hold that hand a little looser, pretend that there's an egg in your hand for the majority of the race, and once it's 400 meters to go, throw that egg down, clench that fist, and let's go.
Do you actually do that?
A little bit, yeah.
I love that. And then beyond that, the toughness thing is related to, like, we've always had that mentality of I do not quit no matter what. Like, but sometimes, like as you did, stepping away from something that is dangerous and unhealthy for you is the best thing you can do. And we can all do that. You know, we've all been through a run where maybe you've got that pain. You mentioned this earlier about you got, should I be doing this? Oh, well, I think maybe it's a little bit better than it was 5 minutes ago, maybe. So I keep going. And then afterwards you're like, oh, why did I do that? Like it's really sore or whatever. So let's talk about that. Like this, runners tend to have a mentality of like, I don't quit, you know, quitting is for the weak, but you and I have both been people who have kind of like completely stepped away from something. And I would say that was scarier than continuing what you were doing. So yeah, talk about that end of it.
I love this quote, and it's that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting the same result or a different result. And I think it's really easy, based on that definition as a runner, to always be insane, because we all want to do a little bit more. We all really want to run that mileage. If I could do just one more speed workout a week. And it's really hard to know that, doing something a little different might result in a different result. And if the current path that you're on isn't working out, then being able to be brave enough to say, I need something different, is really scary. And I know personally, I've been very scared. Even when I came out with my New York Times piece, I think I was more scared of realizing that I had been doing this for so long, and I felt so scared for that past version of myself. And I didn't want anybody else to ever feel like that, and to know that it's okay. And it's really beautiful and powerful and brave and courageous to be vulnerable and to say, I can't handle this. I can't do this. This isn't working. And I think just in general, we have these just perceptions that grinding and gritting is better for you. And again, just based on that silly little example of clenching your fists, it's actually not. And I think the more you kind of teach people that in a very kind of easy to grasp, you're testing it out at home sort of way, the more you kind of are able to internalize it in a way and believe that, yeah, this really is the way forward. And it's just unfortunate that, I think up until recent years, the mindset has always been, force it out, grind it out. And you didn't really have many role models who did things differently, or at least admitted to doing things differently, because they were kind of scared that people would maybe take them less seriously because they had this maybe healthier mindset. And I just feel excited, as you were saying earlier, by this kind of next generation of people who are even younger than me. 96 is supposed to be the last year that you're a millennial. So I made it, guys. So these Gen Z kids behind me have a very different mentality. And it's been really exciting to see that. And the more we can just keep pushing that forward and honestly learning from people who are younger than us and saying it's okay to sometimes listen to the 23, 22-year-old, because sometimes they have no idea what they're talking about 90% of the time. But that 10% of wisdom, it's okay to listen to.
Yes, I love that. And then with the people listening, with those of you out here, that doesn't have to be as drastic and as big of a decision as what Mary made or even what I made, but it could be that you ran a race and it didn't go how you planned, and you should take time off, but you are well, it didn't go well, and so I didn't push as hard as I could have, and so I'm just going to keep going. It could be something as simple as that, or it could be you're with a group and they're getting a bit further ahead of you, and you know that this is supposed to be your easy day, but you just don't want to let them go. You don't want to show them weakness. Taking little steps like that we can all do, and it's going to make us, as you said, better runners. Now, wrapping things back together to wrap up here. We've mentioned that elite athletes are not good at showing what's really going on. And I would argue things are way better than they were 5 years ago.
Sure.
It drove me crazy that no one shared any of their struggles. It was all keeping my secrets to myself. And, I just couldn't stand that. But, so I'd say we're better, but looking back on, so if someone looks at a picture of you or a moment of you winning something and thinks, wow, and I'm talking before you went out to Oregon, early years, and thinks, wow, I wish I could be like that. That's the dream. And people often think that elite running life is you get to fly all over the place, except for it isn't mentioned that when you go somewhere and you've got a race, you need to stay in the hotel room. So you actually don't get to explore this cool place. I actually did once and I got in trouble in Amsterdam. But you don't get to explore it. Or the fact that
you might see someone saying, what a race, that was amazing. But then the hour before the race, they were like a dragon and was like yelling at everyone around them. And maybe some of us still do that sometimes. But it's not what it seems. So when I look back at pictures of myself, and I see that, I feel almost like sorry for myself because I was so unhappy, in many ways, but I was trying to put on this front of like, look at this life I'm living. So I'd love for you to talk to that. Maybe, not when you were 12, 13, but, maybe 15 to 20 of where, you maybe had young girls or even older women like ask you and think like, wow, you are just living the best life. I wish I could live your life. And maybe, it's not quite what it seems.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think first off, social media is something that, there's really positive aspects to it. And as we all know, there's also really negative parts to it. And I think the negative things is there's this real pressure to create this idyllic life in pictures and in, funny tweets and in these like very capturable moments that just take a second. And I think it's, as you said, been going in the right direction where people are feeling a lot, I guess, more aware of the fact that that can be very negative to only ever be sharing the positive moments, because many of us struggle with our mental health, and whether or not it's something diagnosable like depression or anxiety or stuff like that, we all have struggles. We all have insecurities. We all have doubts. And the more that people who are influential, whether in sport or otherwise, are able to remind people that that's totally okay. That's what makes us human. I think is really powerful. But I think this kind of brings up a lot of the issues, though, in the professional sports world, where I don't blame athletes for not sharing, because the truth is how they're being compensated to be professional runners really discourages honesty, really discourages Tina from having a fun adventure in Amsterdam. Really.
Not that kind of adventure, could I just say?
Going to like one park and get some trouble. No. And really discourages even bluntly healthy dynamics between teammates. And the reason is that how most professional runners are paid is they sign a contract with a shoe company that makes them an independent contractor that has a term that often has reductions. And yes, we've come a long way in the last 2 years, I say kind of sarcastically, with things like more maternity protection. But the truth is there's other ways to get reduced. And even when it comes to maternity protection, there's still often in contracts clauses like you need to run 10 number of races per year in order not to get reduced. Well, how are you supposed to do that if you get pregnant? How are you supposed to run 10 races in what? Like when you're 8 months pregnant? What if you're having a difficult pregnancy? How are you going to be able to handle that? And so the truth is we're still in the same mindset within the professional sports world that made Allison Felix wake up at 5 a.m. while she was pregnant to go do her track workouts in the dark because she was scared somebody was going to see that she was pregnant, and therefore she was going to have to be terminated within her contract. So just take a moment to let that sink in and realize that there's a lot of fear from athletes that if you come out and you say, hey, I had surgery, hey, I got hurt, insert whatever you want, there's real fear that the organization that is supporting you is not going to stick around, or maybe isn't going to include you in the same number of opportunities that they did before. Or maybe they're going to take away the opportunity for you to join a certain team that you'd been hoping to join at the end of the season, or work with a certain coach that you'd been hoping to, and force you to move across the country to move with somebody else who's quote unquote more proven. And so once you kind of look at that, you start to realize that, is it really social media's fault? Is it really the athlete's fault? Or is it in actuality the people who are controlling the athlete's ability to support themselves and live? And I just want to kind of remind people that so often in sport, we do focus on the athletes. If an athlete makes a decision, we want to kind of dissect afterwards, like, what did they do wrong? Should they have done it? You know, we like to say, like, the rules are the rules, or, you know, the athlete is in control all the time. But I think my mentality, whenever I see anything related to any athlete in any sport, is to be like, wonder what that company did. I wonder why they're not protecting the athlete. I wonder why they're not supporting the athlete. I don't think, why did Naomi Osaka decide not to play that match? I think, why aren't these tennis organizations sitting and having a conversation with her to make sure that she feels protected in the press box? And I think as soon as we kind of take a step back and always remember that there are people behind the athletes and there are reasons that make people make the decisions that they do, and it doesn't always have to come from their own personal kind of wants and needs, the more we're going to realize, okay, how do we change that structure so that athletes feel protected and so that they can have these conversations? And so that's something that I'm doing within my organization. All of the contracts that athletes are going to be signing has absolutely nothing to do with athletic performance. Everything within it is a traditional employee relationship. They're going to be W-2 athletes, so it's an at-will contract. There's not a term life. This is something in which if you get hurt, if you decide to get pregnant, if whatever your life path is going to be, if there are interruptions, if there are moments where you want to share something, we're encouraging that and we're giving you that grace and space to do that, because the truth is you should. You should feel protected as an individual by the people who are paying you and supporting you to kind of take these bold steps and really express yourself in whatever way makes you feel good, loved, and powerful. And I just hope that starting a team like Atalanta New York will continue to put pressure on the organizations that be, and even the ones who are doing a good job right now, and make them think, okay, just because I'm beating the bad guys doesn't mean I'm doing everything perfectly, and doesn't mean there's opportunities. There's not opportunities to grow and change and continue to adapt. And I hope we put pressure on people to continue to wonder, hey, how do I make sure athletes really feel a part of this, protected, and like they can speak up?
Well, I have no doubt that you will be doing that, but it's very interesting hearing you say that. And I hadn't even thought about it that way before, but it's funny because the athletes that we look at when you see social media or when you see performing, it's as much as the performance is what the athlete is, their money comes from. It's also the relatability, right? It's the seeing that person like as a human being and seeing them, getting to know their personality, because we all can think of some athletes who just are all about performance and very secretive, very keep everything. You never know anything about what's going on, but they're not always the most likable, right? Because you don't get to know them. And so like, it's just totally opposite ends of the spectrum, because you want the fans, the people following, the people, if people are to be invested in our sport, they're going to have to get to relate to the people they're watching, but then they can't be that person because they're being pulled by people behind the scenes. So really interesting there. And then final thing to bring it all together. So we are here in Beacon at the Tracksmith outpost. I mean, Tracksmith is clearly done that for you and Nick Willis, making it not about performance. And then everyone who is here is either already loved the brand or now does. And actually I was talking to some people who were running this morning, and they were saying, I said, oh, what brought you here? Or how did you find Tracksmith? And I can't remember who it was actually. And they said, oh, I loved the brand. I was a fan of the brand. And I thought, how many brands out there? Like, you don't say I'm a fan of Coca-Cola or I'm a fan of like Whirlpool, but you say that with Tracksmith. And so, I just want to take a moment to thank them and also to have you say anything about like how Tracksmith, like you're doing it with Atalanta, but maybe they gave you some confidence that this could be done.
Oh, 100%. I had always, or not always, but I guess before my New York Times piece came out, I sat my parents down and I told them I'm never going to get a sponsorship. I'm like, I want to keep running because I love running and I love the community of friends and really at this point family that I've created through the sport. I said, but nobody is going to touch me with a 10-foot pole and I'm going to have to find a normal job and, you know, kind of have this be this almost side passion that I continue to pursue. And Tracksmith really changed that for me. They were incredibly excited to be bringing somebody who not only was in a city that they were excited to be expanding into, somebody who has a degree in business, because I guess people check my resumes now. That's kind of cool. And excited to work with somebody who had a background of public speaking and writing and loved to do community work. And yeah, it was really cool that I've run fast and they liked that. And of course, that was what opened the door for me to really have this conversation with them. But I think the immediate feeling of being valued and then, when I had surgery almost a year ago, I was so scared to tell everybody that I was going to have bilateral hip arthroscopy like 4 months into starting this job. And I had a group call in which I kind of broke the news to everybody. And after the first, like, oh, we hope you're okay. Like, if there's anything we can do, like, what's your address? We're going to send you cookies moment. They did send me cookies, by the way. They sent me Levain. After that initial conversation, the next thing was, okay, like, do you want to write a piece about this? Like, this could be kind of interesting. Like, I bet other people have had surgery. How do we help that person make sure that they know they can come out of this? And that was the moment for me where I was like, every single professional runner should have this. Every single professional runner should feel like they can call up what I consider my teammates and say, hey, I'm going through something and I maybe need some help. I need to take a step back. I maybe need some support right now. And they say, oh my God, what's your address? I'm going to send you cookies. And so Tracksmith is 100% the reason that I really knew this model could work. And I see it happening. Mason Furlick, shout out to another Tracksmith teammate, just made the Olympic team. We had 5 athletes who represent Tracksmith make the Olympics just last week and the week before. And I think we're really having this incredibly powerful moment right now where we are changing the conversation of what amateur and what professional can really mean. Amateur comes from amo amare. Yes, I took Latin, which means to love. And I think there's something really powerful about bringing that back into the professional world and reminding people that not only can they love the sport they're in, but that they also can feel loved with the people they're working for and really kind of send that love back into the community. And so even though on paper, a lot of our athletes are going to be quote unquote professional and that they compete at that level, I think we're really going to be bringing the love back into the sport. And I hope that continues to grow.
Yeah, that's so cool. Thank you. And by the way, Tracksmith did not know I was going to ask that question. So just want that wasn't placed there.
Yeah. I don't know if any of my coworkers are back here right now. So there's Lou. Hey. And so, Steve.
That would have, yeah, like totally missed it. Like, never mind.
You guys got to listen to the podcast now. Hear how great I sounded.
No promises on that end being outside. And then finally, what can everyone sitting here today, people listening, how can we support you with what you're doing at Atalanta? Like, what is the way that we can best be there for you and what you're trying to do?
No, I appreciate you asking that. And I think the biggest thing is to follow us. We have we're on Instagram now and Twitter. I have a LinkedIn.
You have a newsletter, which your person told me about.
Yep. If you go to atalantanyc.org, you can donate. You can contact us. Our email is contact@atalantany.com. And just reach out. The last week has been so beautifully positive. And I will say that when my New York Times piece came out, it was incredibly overwhelming. And I say that not entirely in a positive way. People sent me the most beautiful messages, but I think at the time I wasn't fully ready to hear it because I wasn't prepared for that level of positivity. And there was almost a scariness to it because I myself wasn't maybe deeper into my own healing process. And to have had such amazing support after our launch this last week has really meant something to me. And after my New York Times piece, I don't know, did I really get back to anybody who messaged me? And now I've been able to read the emails and able to read the messages and have just beautiful conversations with people. So please reach out. Would love to hear from everybody. And if you want to get involved, definitely also join our newsletter because we're hoping to, keep spreading the word over the next couple months, especially as we're getting our programming off the ground about ways that you can potentially volunteer and help and support the service side of our organization, not only through whatever financial support that you can, but also just by being a part of the community. And so really excited to continue to get to grow this community of runners in New York and bring the first ever professional team to New York City.
Yeah, I cannot wait to look back in 10 years or look at the moment in 10 years and see where Mary has taken this. I mean, it's so exciting to think about. And so, yeah, I want to thank Tracksmith for having this awesome little house in Beacon and giving us this opportunity. For Mary, for everything you have done for our sport. You truly are one of the most influential, most honest, open, just lovable characters in the entire sport. And to you guys, thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thank you guys.
There we go.
Before we end this episode, I just want to take a moment to shout out my podcast editor, Jeremy Nessel, who has done such a wonderful job of looking after my podcast, taking out all the mishaps in the episodes, while still keeping in the vulnerability and the realness and the rawness of the conversation. This is not one of those podcasts where I take out the ums and the ers and the sometimes the delay in words, because I think it's very important to keep that authenticity. We're surrounded by perfected and manicured everything. And I think it's really important that Running for Real stays that way. So thank you to Jeremy for your work. I also want to thank Maria Vargas and Amber Moore, who are also part of my team. They've been a big part of this community and me being able to build this brand. So just want to give them a shout out too. All right, let's get right back to the end of this episode. That was a special one, right? Thank you for joining us today. It was an amazing experience. I apologize if the audio on my end wasn't as good as I said it was going to be. That is what happens when two people who don't really know audio stuff were here trying to figure it out. I will take the blame for that though, because I was the one setting it up. That said, maybe Jeremy, you can come with us on future trips. Maybe we can have an audio engineer, full-time audio engineer sometime in the future. We can dream about that, right? But that conversation with Mary, you at least got her parts really clear, was just amazing. A lot to think about. She's so easy to talk to. I mean, what a woman. So excited for the future of what she ends up doing. And you be sure to go follow Atalanta. If you haven't already, go support them. That is what she said she can do. She is on a mission. So that's one way you can definitely support the future. And as she said, we all have a role in this. We are all impacted by this. So be sure to go check out Atalanta. Go follow Mary while you are at it. And I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors for today, which are, of course, Tracksmith for hosting this. You can use code TINA15 at tracksmith.com. To Beam, you can go to beamtlc.com and use code TINA for 15% off your order. And to Picky Bars, you can go to pickybars.com/Tina to get 20% off your order. You will get all kinds of offers if you sign up for the Picky Club. But if you use code TINA, you will get an additional 20% off, which is pretty cool. I am a Picky Club member myself. And friends, I will see you on Monday for another Together run. And next Friday, be prepared for an interview with Malcolm Gladwell.